Hello and welcome to the Pet Stop. I'm Dr. Brian Voynick from the American Animal Hospital in Randolph. Well, you may be think that training a dog not to bark is like training a fish not to swim. Well, it turns out dog barking can become a nuisance and a stress for the owner, but my next guest will tell you what you can do about it. Greg Kleva is dog behavioral therapist and master trainer with Barkbusters. He also hosts It's a Dog's Life on Sirius XM's Martha Stewart Living Radio. Great to have you on again, Greg.
Always nice to be with you, Dr. Voynick.
And
How you
thanks
doing?
for having me on the radio show, Martha Stewart. This is a lot of fun.
We always have a great time when you join us, for sure.
It's a great program. So barking, tell us about, you're a behaviorist, so you must get a lot of complaints. Is it about your number one complaint next to aggression, I suppose?
Well, they call us Barkbusters for a reason.
There you go.
It's, it can be a problem behavior for dogs. And, people go, does a barking dog mean it's a bad dog? And, it doesn't mean it's a bad dog necessarily. The neighbors may think it's a bad dog, but dogs bark for a lot of different reasons. It could be a fear response, it could be a stress response, or it could be too much excitability. So it's not necessarily a bad dog, but you want to understand why the dog is barking and kind of address things on that level.
Right. Greg, we can start with genetics because if you play the odds, certain dogs are going to be problem barkers more than other breeds, wouldn't you say?
For sure. We'll throw the Beagle right up there at the top of the list.
Okay, so if you're in a tight apartment dwelling, a Beagle may not be your best choice.
Yeah, but I look at, certainly some breeds have breed-specific tendencies, but I don't necessarily say, okay, Beagle's a barker, it's going to bark, there's nothing I can do about it. Just because a herding dog may herd and a barking dog may bark, that doesn't mean they have to do it. So with training and behavior modification, you can kind of temper those behavioral problems.
And one thing I love about your technique, it was evident when I pulled up to the studio this morning, and that was you were running this guy. We got to talk about it. You like to be drug-free. You like to, so you're running him and running yourself. And look how calm he is right here. He's not a hyper guy.
I've been accused, I take dogs all over the place. This is Twinkie. Twinkie's a pit bull.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
She's a good friend of mine from Nutley, New Jersey.
Very sweet.
Good little girl. She's one of those vicious pit bulls that you always hear about, of course. This dog is a marshmallow. She's a great ambassador for the breed. So, but yeah, I've been accused at different events that I take dogs to that I've given the dogs sedatives. And in fact, if you exercise a dog, there's that old adage, a tired dog is a good dog, and we say that for a reason.
Yeah.
Physical stimulation and mental stimulation is one of the keys to addressing many behavioral issues, barking being a big one of them.
Exercise is better than Prozac. Well, tell us, other than genetics, obviously, nutrition can play a role.
Yeah, for sure. We look at when I look at barking, the problem of barking, the barking is a symptom of something else that's going on. So we look at the underlying factors. Nutrition can play a role. We think it's so important that dog owners understand the ingredients that go into their dog food. If you see too much corn, wheat, rice, soy, starchy grain, and carbohydrate, that can lead to hyperactivity, which could cause problem barking.
Just like kids with too much candy.
Absolutely.
Especially at bedtime.
Yep.
Tell us about relationships, how that enters into it.
Yeah, a lot of times a dog will bark because it's confused about its role in the relationship. Dogs live in a world of hierarchy, social hierarchy, leaders and followers, or dominant or alpha. I don't necessarily love those words, but if you don't provide leadership for a dog in a way that a dog understands, you can come say hi, Twink.
Oh, she's so sweet.
She's a sweetheart. Your dog will think that it's in charge of the relationship. That can add a lot of stress to the dog that feels like it's got too much responsibility, or that it can kind of push you around and tell you what to do. That can lead to stress and anxiety, too much responsibility, and that could cause a dog to bark for a number of reasons as well.
Okay, education's next.
Yeah, you got to train your dog not to bark. There's a couple different ways to go about that. If you teach your dog, sometimes the behavior is inadvertently reinforced. It's all about what's the outcome of the barking. The mailman comes to the door and the dog barks and the mailman goes away. The dog goes, I did a great job. That's what I'm supposed to do, is chase other animals off of our property. So again, if the dog's confused about the relationship and if that behavior is inadvertently reinforced, it's going to be problematic.
Right. If they're barking excessively, the worst thing you can do is to go up to them and they'll think, well, that's how I get attention. It's best to get up to them when they're finally quiet, if that's possible.
Again, it's about the outcome. If the dog is barking and, on the softer side of training, and while we're talking about education, the softer side of training is when the dog stops barking, reinforce that positively. Give the dog a bunch of treats or give the dog lots of praise, positive reinforcement. I like to address the negative as well, so I take a little bit more of a firm approach and create a negative consequence. If the dog is barking give it a little bit of a growly correction or a no bark, a firm command, and maybe a little squirt with a water squirter, kind of a soft approach. And then so the dog goes, whoa, I didn't like that. When I bark, I didn't like what happened. So I don't like the outcome of barking. I won't bark anymore. And when I stop barking, I get all this love and affection. There's the positive reinforcement side of it. So
you still use pennies in a can? Some
you can use a noisemaker, something like a penny in a can or something along those lines. So again, something that's, I don't like shock collars. I don't like prong collars. Something that will create a negative consequence, but that doesn't create pain or discomfort.
Okay. And boredom, obviously. Maybe a second dog might be appropriate.
It can, but sometimes you compound the issues if you're bringing a second dog to solve a barking issue or any other behavioral problem. So addressing boredom is back to that, what we talked about before, physical and mental stimulation. A tired dog is a good dog. Exercise the dog, play a spirited game of fetch, give food motivational toys that create mental stimulation.
Okay. Greg, always great to have you on. Thanks for your tips.
Thanks so much, Dr. Voynick.
Well, you're welcome.